let me introduce you to our speaker. And today you're going to get a twofer. So you're going to get our scheduled speaker, Erich Butler, who's the smiley face is on the right of your little rectangle, and he's run along. He has brought along his cohort, Miles Wallace from Peak Performers. So let me talk to you about Erich. The talk that they're going to share is Navigating Success, your 2024 Job Search Strategy Guide. Erich is a disability inclusion partner at Peak Performers. His role is to connect job seekers, employers, and community resource groups to Peak Performers to grow the business and nonprofit mission. Peak Performers helps people with disabilities find work, helps employers find great talent, and all the while normalizes what it means to be a professional living and working with a disability. They do give priority to people with disabilities or conditions in their referral, but unless the model has changed, and they'll correct me if I'm wrong, if they don't find people with a qualifying condition or disability who's qualified to do the job, they tap into their resume pool of anybody who is looking for a job. And so if you don't qualify under the disability condition category, that doesn't mean that they can't still help you and connect you with a job. And if I'm wrong on that, they will correct me. Before Peak Performers, Erich worked as a senior IT recruiter and a corporate trainer for companies such as Dysys, Aerotech, Kelly Services, Centrix, and Verizon. Outside of his work, he is passionate about, no surprise, fashion, and is regularly the best dressed person in the office. With no more delay, I present Erich and Miles. Yay.
Hello, everyone. I brought along Miles with me. What a great introduction. Miles, won't you take a couple of minutes to tell them about a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure, yeah. I am alongside Erich, also a disability inclusion partner. And like Kathy said, by the way, our mission hasn't changed. It's the same exact thing that it has been for the last 30 years. So you're on track right there. But yeah, we are on a mission to help professionals with disabilities find jobs and help normalize what it means to have a disability in the workplace as well, too. I myself have been working for Peak for about 6.5 years now, and I'm here to be a resource for you as well as a number of other community partners that are in and around Austin and the nation as well, too. While Erich may be the best dressed person in the office, I definitely play the most board games of anybody in the office. So let me know if you ever want to play a board game or two. I'm more than happy to kind of do that. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to go ahead and share our entire screen. By the way, y'all, when you are, we have a decent sized crowd today. So as you have questions, please make sure to drop them into the chat. And Shannon, Kathy, if you wouldn't mind, keep an eye out for the chat. We don't always see those messages popping up, but just let us know that as questions come up so that we can address them as well.
Okay. Erich did say that he'll give you lots of time at the end of the presentation for Q&A, but if you have a burning question that you need answered, put it in the chat and we'll get it to them.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. So just about Peak, just jumping right in there. Peak Performers, we started out over 28 years ago. We started in 1994. And what we do is we help people with disabilities find careers, not just jobs, but careers. And then we help the clients find the qualified candidates, people like you all on the call that are hungry for that next role. The type of jobs we do offer are temporary, temp to hire, and direct hire / permanent. So coming through Peak Performers, we check all the boxes. We sometimes get part-time, but our bread and butter is full-time Monday through Friday work. We placed over 850 people last year in Texas alone. And some of those roles were around administrative, accounting, finance, engineering. There's some IT and scientific roles, all in that 850. The average pay was also around what, 34, 35?
About $35.
About $35 an hour as well. So we got the roles, and we also got the roles that are paying that good money. I can't even see that.
Oh. Let me move this over
Yes,
here.
thank you. And then we have some of the clients that peak performers work with, right? That's pretty important. We have over 80 local clients, but we are national. So I don't want you to focus on that local, even though we are local, we are national. So the sectors do include government, insurance, financial, engineering, nonprofit, administrative and business, as well as legal.
Yeah, and by the way, just to kind of add a little bit more context to this, Kathy kind of touched on it already, but a disability may be broader than you realize. It's anything physical or mental that affects one or more major life functions. So that might be somebody that experiences ADHD, somebody with sleep apnea, or somebody that currently has or has previously battled cancer, or maybe somebody that has depression or anxiety disorders. I myself am usually talking to you through a pair of hearing aids due to the profound hearing losses that I experience, as well as some of the more visible and obvious stuff such as missing an arm or being a person that's a wheelchair user. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to level the playing field for people with disabilities and make sure that all people have access to jobs that are worthy of their innate talents. If you do have questions about that, we do have a website dedicated to that to kind of talk a little bit more about what it means to have a disability, what is included, and of course, me and Eric are more than happy to address any of those questions that you have. Before I forget to mention it, we did drop our LinkedIn links in the chat, so feel free to connect with us because we're more than happy to connect with you and answer any of the questions that you have regarding our mission. And just to kind of recap too, you can find all of our jobs, peakperformers.org. Please go ahead and bookmark it. We do get new jobs every single day, sometimes every hour. So it never hurts to check periodically to see what kinds of jobs that we have. And I would encourage you see that pink button that's down at the bottom. If you don't see a job that's a perfect fit right now, please do click on the quick apply because that's your best way of being seen in the future for all the future possible opportunities that pop up. But let's go ahead and dive right into it. So what are we talking about today, Eric?
So as you can see here on our screen, we're talking about a couple of things that will keep you motivated while you're doing the job search, some strategies that would, keep you just motivated and really hungry for that next interview, for that next role you're wanting to land. So we'll start with job loss is hard. That acknowledgement of knowing that what you're going through is hard will set you up for success in the long run, right? You have to realize what you're doing. The first step is recovery of acknowledging what you're going through. Job loss is hard, and it's okay to admit it and seek help. And that's why you guys are here at this Launchpad Job Clubs. Clubs like this are perfect for you to stay motivated, to communicate and to congregate with fellow people that are going through the same thing so you can brush ideas off of each other, bounce ideas off of each other, and it'll just be that much more beneficial in the long run.
I think that so often we get so focused on, I need a job right now, I'm losing income, I need to put food on the table, that sometimes we don't take the necessary time to really acknowledge how it makes us feel. I like to tell job seekers that I was fired from my very first job, and it was emotionally incredibly difficult for me. It upset my value that I perceived of myself. I started feeling like I'm not really worth anything. I can't really contribute anything. And I think everybody experiences it differently too. It also might be different too if you are a person that experiences a layoff as well, because that might be more of like an accountant that's looking through a gigantic spreadsheet and just choosing to terminate people based off of numbers and based off of business decisions as well. So that can feel different, but every job loss is hard. And I think that it's really important for you to check in with yourself and to acknowledge that and to really try to understand where you're coming from and then move forward as well too. But like Eric said, connect with resources such as Launchpad Job Club so you can voice those frustrations and so you can kind of really get move forward. Because a lot of times if you move into an interview and you have that chip on your shoulder still and you're still very angry at employers, it can be detrimental towards the interview as well too. So it's really important to kind of acknowledge where you're at and try to move forward in a healthy way as too. But I wanted to kind of talk about, now that we've kind of moved past emotionally where we're at right now, I think that it's time to think ahead and develop a strategy. The other really big problem that I see with a lot of job seekers is that they don't have a strategy. They are so focused on getting a job that they don't really stop to think about, how do I do that in a way that's going to really make me happy long term, because there's nothing worse than going and getting hired on in a job and then being laid off 3 months later because it was something that wasn't really a passion for you, or finding yourself even stuck in that role for months or years at a time because you're afraid of experiencing job loss again. And really, so it's important to kind of take a step back to look at all of your experience, and then not only to develop a strategy for what you want, but also to develop a realistic strategy for what you bring to the table. Because each of us has unique talents, each of us has unique strengths, and many of you that are on the call right now are probably undergoing a significant career transition where you are doing a hard shift, right? You did this one thing for many, many years, and now you're doing something completely differently. And you have to develop a very systematic strategy for how you're going to get there and how you're going to market yourself. Oftentimes people approach me and they say, hey, my resume is something, and they're looking at it almost like it's carved in stone. But what you have to realize is that your resume and the way that you present yourself, it's just marketing. It's all how you present yourself, and it's all how you portray yourself, and how you sell yourself to the employer at the same time.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Miles. And I'm going to put myself in these shoes for the next one here. Like when I go grocery shopping, guys, right? When I go to the grocery store, I just don't get in my car and drive to the grocery store, right? I have to make a list of what I'm wanting, because if I don't, I'm just going to be going in there and I'm just going to be free falling, going through the aisles. And before you know it, my bill is $300, right? And you got to kind of think of that, your job search, as the same thing. You don't want to just start by sitting down and just going to job boards and just seeing, right? You want to write down your goals, write down what's worked for you, write down what you want to do next, write down the environments you want to be in. And then when you're going and searching, you have a more directed avenue to a directed path to take. And that's where I'm going to next, as one step at a time, right? You have to take it step by step. Sitting down and realizing where you're at, what you're wanting to do, and then calculating and setting those goals and moving forward will be the most benefit that you can do, and to keep you from falling into frustration. So we often feel like we're not doing enough, but remember that some progress is better than none. So even sitting down and writing down some goals and not even doing any searching yet, but sitting down and just writing down a goal, that's something that's better than nothing, because you're starting. And then the next day or a couple of hours later, you can go in and then do the next thing and then the next thing. But you would want to make sure you're setting up goals. And then when you're setting up your goals and you accomplish them, check them off and pat yourself on the back, because you've really accomplished what you've wanted to do. And that is a good thing.
One of the challenges with job seeking is that when we work in most environments, there's a lot of structure that's already built around us. But when you find yourself in a job search situation, a lot of times what you find is that there is no structure to your day.
Right.
There's nothing to say that I could wake up at 10, I could wake up at noon, I could start my job search at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, or maybe I'll just do it tomorrow. And it's easy to get caught in that cycle.
Yes.
So like Erich said, it's about setting small goals, it's about awarding yourself, but it's also about setting structure and really kind of holding yourself accountable for that. And part of that structure is you need to get out there. It does not make sense to do your job search completely and entirely alone. Going to work is the most social thing that I do every single day. And for many of you, it's a similar kind of situation. Of course, there's work from home situations that might be a little different, but even then you are getting online with people and you're typically getting in many different meetings as well. Networking is a critical part about doing that. And networking is important for not only finding a job, but also getting some of that community feedback and talking with other people. So it's really important that you do get out there. So I'm really excited about Shannon and Kathy, how they mentioned all these different events that are coming up. I would encourage you to attend those. I would encourage you to get up on meetup.com. I would encourage you to schedule a coffee time with maybe some of your connections that you haven't talked to in a long time. It's all about getting out there and talking to people, because most of you will probably find your job from somebody that you know.
Yes.
The finding a job through things like beating through the applicant tracking system and applying for a job through Indeed that has hundreds of other applicants and stuff. Yeah, you can do that, and people find jobs that way every single day, but most people still find their jobs based off of who they know, having an inside track, So the more that you can get out there and let people know that you are available to work and here's what you bring to the table, the more success that you will find. And sometimes too, there will be a very indirect effect too, where I'm talking to Eric and Eric's like, well, I don't have a job right now, but you should check out this other company. And that's how you find a position.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I just wanted to piggyback off of that one and just also diversify how you are looking. Don't get up every day and get on the computer and do the same thing, go to the same site, Indeed, every day. You will get frustrated. So getting out there is also diversifying how you're looking. One day you're on the computer, the next day maybe you're at the coffee house at Starbucks looking, and then the next day you're at, a library, and then you're at a job club, and then you're at a job fair. These different things mixing and mingling. But I had a best friend that got up and did the same thing every day. Got up, checked her email, and got on Indeed and did that for 3 months and didn't find anything. And at the end of that 3 months, she was almost ripping out her hair, right? I had to talk to her and let her know, yeah, like, get out, get from behind your desk and get out for a little bit and just diversify how you're looking.
So the most important thing is that you have to keep moving forward. You may have experienced things that were incredibly traumatic for you, and you may feel completely overwhelmed. But the most important thing is that you have to stay motivated. You have to keep getting out there, and you have to keep positive.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, I wish this weren't the case, but there's nothing more disqualifying than a candidate with a bad attitude.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, but you really have to kind of move past that, and you really have to be able to kind of keep that positive energy moving forward. So moving on with that, I want to actually kind of talk a little bit more about who's actually hiring. And I'll start this one off because I feel like a lot of times we only know what we know. And a lot of times we are only applying for the big name brands that we see, say, for example, on our laptop or on our computer, or ones that we hear about in the news. So I want to actually kind of start this one off with a story. I'm back during the middle of the pandemic. The local unemployment rate shot up to 14.5%, and HEB came and made national news when they told the world, hey, HEB is hiring. So in the small town of Hutto, Texas, which has a population, last time I checked, of less than 10,000 people, in a single week, due to the fact that they made national news, they got 76,000 resumes. And that is not an exaggeration. We see this over and over with the amplification effect, where realistically, if you work for Apple and if you work for IBM, if you work for these big, well-known companies, you are never going to hurt as a recruiter for finding candidates. And if you're a candidate, odds are every single other candidate also wants to work for these companies as well. So you need to move past the big brand names, and you need to seek out smaller companies that are less visible. During that very same week, when it was the middle of COVID and things were on fire and everybody was unemployed and it was a really scary time, I walked down the street to my local grocery store that's kind of like an expanded bodega called Mikasa Market. And I said, hey, so are you guys hiring? Yeah, we're hiring. So just out of curiosity, how many resumes did you get this week? They thought about it for a second. They said, we got 4, which is way more than normal. So realistically, that amplification effect is a very real effect. You need to move past the brand names. So I would encourage you to look around in your community. And that actually kind of brings us to the next point too.
Yes, take a walk or a drive.
Yeah.
Now, and I kind of touched bases on that the last one with diversifying, get from behind your computer. This is almost piggybacking off of that one. You'll never know what is out there from behind your computer until you get in your car and drive. Nowadays, in today's environment, only the big tech companies are the ones spending that money, that large amount of money for Indeed posts, for the LinkedIn posts, for the career builder posts. The littler mid-sized companies, they don't want to spend that money, so they're passing that that savings off to the candidates. So you might want to get in your car and take a drive. You might see a now hiring sign here or there, or walking in your community, driving somewhere and then taking a walk. You might find out, or you might hear of some local businesses or things that are hiring.
And if you can't drive, which some of us are not able to drive too, or some of us might have very small geographical footprint or might rely on the bus, at least look up Google Maps, at least look up a local newspaper like Austin Business Journal or something to discover realistically, you know, we think about these different companies like IBM, and we just assume that all their jobs are tech jobs. Actually, they probably have a good number of accountants that work for them too. They probably have a good number of administrative personnel. They probably have a good number of security guards that work for them. So any of these large companies even have a broader scope of all the different positions that are available. And when you kind of couple that with going and finding companies that you've never heard of before and then start discovering jobs that you didn't know existed, you can really have an edge on the competition. Because yes, you have to move beyond Indeed, because realistically, only the very large companies are the ones that have the budget to spend on Indeed. And realistically, they are spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year, which for them is a drop in the bucket. But for small and medium-sized companies, that's a huge investment. So what you need to do is you oftentimes need to go directly to their job board. The state of Texas is pretty famous for this, actually, where they will go and they'll post their jobs directly on their website and directly on their job boards, and then they wait for the candidates to discover them. So you have to move beyond Indeed. I like to recommend that Indeed is a really good place to start.
Right.
It's a really good place to make a list of different companies that you've never heard of, and then you go and bookmark their website directly so that you can go and check in on them regularly. Because realistically, too, the other thing that people don't realize is that by the time a job hits Indeed, you oftentimes are going to be experiencing a flood of candidates coming through. And by the time that you even get in the mix, they may have already filled the job. So if you can get in earlier in the process, a lot of times that will work to your advantage. And then finally, network, right?
Right. And that's basically what we've been talking about through all of these boxes. But networking, we can't say it enough, right? Make connections, have coffee, attend, what was that? Attend events. Yeah. And then also, you never know who you're going to run into. You never know who is going to be at these events until you get out there. So I know that a lot of times getting out there sounds, you know,
scary
to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It sounds very scary to a lot of people. But I like to say I say this to my parents a lot of times when they say they don't like doing things. I say there's nothing to it but to do it. So you just got to get up and get out there, and you'll be happy at the end of the day when you have, because you will find out there's a lot to networking.
And what you'll find is that most people actually feel pretty awkward with networking anyway. So you're in good company in that regard. But also realize, too, that if people are attending this kind of thing, they're usually attending it for a reason. And so they're usually open to talking to you as well. So, you know, you got to get past that, and you got to get out there and network. And at the very end, at the very least, too, I would also encourage you to network in a digital platform as well. You have to get on LinkedIn. You have to build your LinkedIn presence. And furthermore, I would recommend that you reach out to all the people that you know or have previously known and just let them know that you are available and that you'd be interested in talking with them about any jobs, or, hey, do you know of anybody that's hiring right now?
That does bring up a good point. Networking does not always mean getting out of your house, right? You can network digitally. You can network on LinkedIn. You can network on these platforms. So just make sure you're being creative when you're networking. And it'll work for you guys.
So the final thing is, let's talk about recruiting technology and kind of what's changing, what has changed, and how to kind of help give y'all a little bit of the upper edge. So, I mean, applicant tracking systems are kind of here to stay, aren't they?
They are here to stay, but what do you think about those?
So realistically, every single business in the world is going to use an applicant tracking system because it is too convenient not to. And realistically, they're going to fall behind all of their competition if they do not. It's estimated that 99% of all Fortune 500 companies have them. And realistically, the only companies that don't have them are very, very small businesses that oftentimes have antiquated infrastructure. Realistically, for many companies, even Indeed acts as an applicant tracking system. And let's talk about what an applicant tracking system actually means. ATS, or applicant tracking system, is just a way of tracking applicants through your system, logging all of your interactions with them, and then making sure that you are engaging with them in a consistent manner. But then also it's going to do things like automatically recommend candidates based off of a perceived score. We get a little bit into the AI portion right there, right?
Little.
But it's going to recommend certain candidates based off of how relevant they seem based off of keywords. There's a lot of different research out there, and Kathy has some really, really great resources that can help you beat the ATSs, or at least kind of optimize your resume for the ATSs. But you do need to get used to using them and realize that applicant tracking systems are here to stay and may be frustrating as a candidate, but you have to be able to be nimble and work with it.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our next one, is getting social, right? LinkedIn, and I heard you guys talking about LinkedIn earlier before this call, before we even got on our presentation. You guys have been, I think the Launchpad team is doing a great job at giving you guys the right information about LinkedIn and staying social. And that is the best thing you guys can do. LinkedIn is a crucial part of building your brand, and most employers are using it to see, if you're a knowledge expert on what you are applying for or how you are presenting yourself to the audience, they are looking at all of that. So you want to just make sure that your LinkedIn, when you're on LinkedIn, there's ways to utilize it to your benefit. I would make sure, for me personally, I follow the companies that I have respect for. So I'll go in there and I would follow Peak Performers. I follow Launchpad. I follow the companies that I may be interested in finding jobs for, because following them, anytime there's anybody in their company that posts anything or jobs, it'll come up on your timeline automatically. So that's, one good way of staying in the now of the jobs. I also would go ahead and stay active and social with liking posts in your community, and making sure you're staying engaged, and being very communicative on there, because that is what's going to, one, get your profile. It'll be put in other people's faces, your impressions. It'll be up to the top the more you interact on LinkedIn. It's all about that algorithm.
There's a couple of different levels within LinkedIn. So step one, you may need to make sure you have one, right? Many people do not have a LinkedIn. And if you are looking for a job in 2024 in a professional capacity, I would argue that you 100% need one. So most people are not going to be able to get around that, because your employer is going to be looking, and if they don't find anything, then they might even perceive that as a problem with you as a candidate, or they might perceive you as trying to hide something. So there's level one, is have something, have a picture, have some basic information, have basically a digital version of your resume up on LinkedIn, so they at least know that you are the person that you represent you are on your resume as well. Step two, I would say, is engaging. I oftentimes call LinkedIn the land of the lurkers, and that's because we will regularly have posts that receive 1,000, 2,000 views, and then we'll get like 2 thumbs up, right? And realistically, you stand an enormous opportunity right here to stand out from the crowd of those 1,000 to 2,000 people, just simply by engaging with people that you want to strategically network with. So by going through, and this goes beyond just like saying congratulations on your new job. What it really means is being able to engage with them in a thoughtful way that helps amplify their brand and helps amplify their mission and their goals, because by doing so, they're going to appreciate that. I know the names of the people that regularly like my stuff and that regularly comment on my stuff, and I have a higher degree of favor for them too. They stand out for me much more,
Right.
and I'm much more likely to look for a job for them than I am other candidates too. So, it really does help to amplify you and to kind of get your brand out there. And then the final step two, level three, if you want to become a LinkedIn ninja, is you really need to think about unique content creation. How can you add your voice in a way that is engaging and compelling and really builds your brand? We think about your brand. What we're talking about is, how do you stand out? How do you stand out as a professional? And what is the unique value that you contribute to that? That can be creating posts, that can be creating articles, that can be sharing other content with your unique flavor and your unique spin. But whatever it happens to be, it is something that you can do. The bar for being a LinkedIn guru is relatively low, all things compared. And it is a wide open field, and employers actively use it.
But that brings you to the next one, which is manage your reputation. Even though you're on, the step three to be that ninja, that LinkedIn ninja, right? You always got to be aware that that is a platform and there's a lot of eyes there. So watch what you say online because it is forever, right? You may go in and redact that, but somebody could have already, you know, what do you call it? Screenshot it or shared it somewhere else. And then it's before you know it, it's everywhere. So really watch what you say online because it is forever. And also building a brand is about knowledge, expertise, and effective PR.
And it's not just LinkedIn. Realistically, if you have a Facebook, you need to watch what you say right there. Employers are going to check all of your different socials in consideration for you. There's a lot of arguments about whether that is allowed, how
Or
much of that's
intrusive,
allowed,
right?
but realistically, most employers are probably going to check you out as an entire candidate, and that includes your entire social media profile
Yeah.
too. So I know it sucks because, sometimes we want to say things and sometimes we engage with our audiences in a way that might not necessarily be something that we want our employers to see, but it is important to kind of restrict that message and really look at it as a public relations kind of thing, as a PR thing for how you present yourself. But, it's not only about not saying bad things or not saying things that are controversial or not saying things that are going to land you in hot water. It's also about amplifying positivity, amplifying the kind of energy that you want to channel, and really being able to present yourself as that kind of candidate that is going to be that elusive culture fit that we often talk about within the employment landscape as well. And then finally, let's talk about the robots out there. Let's talk about AI.
AI. So about 2 out of 3 of the Fortune 500 companies are already using AI in their screening. So what does that mean? Miles, when you hear that, where does your mind go to?
Realistically, the thing that's missing there too is that this 2/3 represents an applicant tracking system
Right.
actually evolved over the course of 2 decades to have a 99% adoption rate, whereas this 2/3 adoption rate has happened in about 2 years. So realistically, artificial intelligence is going to be here to stay, and I anticipate doing many, many more presentations in the future about how to beat the artificial intelligence, right? We talk about how to
Right.
beat the applicant tracking systems, but how to beat the artificial intelligence. Realistically, the artificial intelligence, it's actually is relatively easy to beat. And a lot of times it comes down to how you present yourself. It also comes down to how um, are you saying the right kinds of things? Are you including the right kinds of keywords in your searches? Because basically what it does is it's just trying to mimic what a human would do, except it's doing it in a very programmatic kind of way. So what you need to do is you need to think about how is a computer going to view this? What is the most basic kind of assessment that they're going to get on me as a candidate? And how do I do better? Kathy, you mentioned HireVue right there, which I have a lot of problems with a video platform that's going to look at a candidate and then evaluate them based off of the way they present themselves. From a disability inclusion standpoint, I have a lot of problems with that. It gives me a lot of pause too. But we do need to be aware that tools like this are going to become increasingly common. I don't have all the answers right now, but a lot of it comes down to just being really, really careful with how you present yourself, making sure that you are saying the buzzwords, making sure that you are saying the keywords, and realistically looking at it not necessarily as I need to get the AI to hire me. I need to get the AI to path me along to the HR manager. The AI is just there as a simple hurdle, just another hurdle that I have to clear.
Right. So the main thing is keywords, those buzzwords, right? Whatever you see in that job description, you want to pull out those ones that are grasping to you and put them in your resumes. That's how you'll be able to beat that bot system, basically, is because they're going to just pull off the keywords.
And I think we're going to see a lot of development with this technology going forward and in the future. But realistically, it's not as scary as it's often made out to be. It can be very discriminatory in many cases. It can unnecessarily weed people out. But realistically, I think that if you take some time to kind of understand exactly how the applications are built, what they're looking for, and then really try to check those boxes, so to say,
You'll be fine.
Then you can oftentimes be fine with that process.
Okay, what I press?
Yeah, so I think that's actually the end of the content, and we wanted to stop there and go over to questions. What kind of questions can we answer for y'all?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
so for the longest time, Peak Performers was only Austin, as far as I know. And then a year ago or whatever, we heard you were in 9 different states, and now suddenly you are national. So what does that mean exactly?
Sure. What that means is that we have a national presence just about everywhere. We are registered to do business in all 50 states. We see certain more activity in some states than others, just to be completely clear about that. So Texas is still home base for us. We are getting a lot of jobs in the state of New York, especially. We also have geographic focuses in areas like Pennsylvania, Florida, and New Jersey as well, too. But realistically, when you go visit our job board, you're going to see jobs all across the United States because we're prepared to kind of work in everywhere, everywhere that a company might need to work with us.
Yeah. So right now, those are the hot states he just said, but pretty soon we will be, in a lot more states than that.
Yeah.
You'll see more.
Okay. And so when you have postings that are virtual, that are remote?
Yes.
Or do you actually have postings where somebody's going to have to relocate, or both?
Well, there's a mix. There's a mix of postings. So a lot of our jobs, if they are out of state, it would say, if it is remote, it would say remote to this state. So it'll say remote to Arizona, remote to Las Vegas, Nevada, right? But if it's not, then it would say on site, or it would say hybrid, in California. So all of our jobs are very descriptive on our website. It'll have the pay, your hours of operation, what we're looking for, your qualifications, and then it's everything is right there. You won't have no questions.
And you might see a couple of weird things, like you might ask yourself, well, I live in Montana. Why couldn't I work remotely in Texas, for example? And a lot of the times that boils down to different employment laws that are in place and the kinds of decisions and the kind of registrations that the company has set up. So to clarify too, you also find a lot of the jobs that happen outside of Texas. A lot of times they're going to be what's called direct hire. That's where basically a company pays peak performers to find people, submit them through their HR process, and then they choose to hire you on as a full-time employee. And you're actually never a temporary employee of peak performers. So it's a growing part of our business, and we still do see a number of temporary roles as well too. But just kind of realize that there's going to be a mix. And when it comes to relocation, that's taken on a case-by-case basis. We do see situations that pop up where somebody has such a outstanding, unique set of skills that the client is willing to relocate them. And then we have seen some clients that are not able to wait, and they're not willing to pay a relocation bonus.
So then in that instance, if the candidate is willing to relocate, they would have to get to that location on their own. And, we have candidates that sometimes do that.
Okay. And since you aren't now, I know, Miles, you used to be a recruiter.
Yep.
And I guess you still do that because you work with us. But now a big part of your job assignment is now doing employer outreach.
Yeah, so good
right?
question, Kathy. Our roles have changed pretty significantly, and Eric used to be a recruiter too. He used to work as an IT recruiter, as did I back in the day for peak performers. Realistically, our job is to connect people to the right other people. So we are connecting with community partners like Launchpad, we're connecting with job seekers, and we're connecting with businesses to really try to change minds about what it means to hire somebody with a disability, to advocate for people with disabilities, but then also to try to connect people back into peak performers. So our role is kind of a mixture of outreach, community building, as well as marketing as well.
When you expand to another state, do you contact businesses, state agencies, whatever? Do you contact them virtually, or do you have salespeople, corporate interface people who actually go to those other states?
It depends. We have a mixture of both. When we were building out the networks for New York and for Pennsylvania, for example, Eric did most of his outreach virtually to connect with those people. I did most of my outreach virtually. And then I had the opportunity when some more formalized opportunities arose, I had the opportunity to go and visit some strategic contacts.
So basically, we do everything virtually,
Mhm.
and then if the need is there, then we get there as well.
But
So
we do have BD business development people that
all over.
that kind of live all over the place
Yeah.
too.
I
Okay.
want to hop in and say how much I loved that you mentioned about driving around, walking around, looking for businesses. Back in the pre-internet days when I was
Yeah.
in sales back in Dallas, I would go into those tall towers all around downtown and everywhere, and go in and go to their directories, and I would just write down the names of
Right, Shannon.
companies.
Yes,
And
that was a
you know,
smart thing because in them large companies, there was at least 10, 11 other,
right.
businesses in that large building. That's the way to think. That's the way to do it.
Well, and I mean, and it was so cool to reach out to those because when I was my first job out of school, I was a music major that did not want to sing afterwards, and so
Mhm.
I ended up working right out of school for an employment agency, and it
Oh,
was straight commission. I worked 5 days a week there, and then 2 days a week at a real estate agency as their receptionist, so I could just because it make some money to pay my rent until I was able to make money doing the straight commission thing. But uh, it was very enlightening as to how many companies there are that you've never heard of, that you probably would never even know existed. But then, and now with the advent of the internet, you can look them up and
Yep.
see, oh, they actually have 200 people in this business park that I didn't even know about because they look like they're just this one little built, like if you're in a business park and you're driving around and they all look kind of bland, no offense.
yeah,
But they just have this one door, but then behind that door, they have the rest of the business park, and you don't even
you're right.
realize that. So I really, really appreciated that you guys mentioned, gave a shout out for that.
Thank you, Shannon. Now, somebody did write to the group right here, David. He did say,
Right.
um, may have been addressed already, but what kind of proof does one need to provide as evidence of a disability?
David, I wouldn't worry about that just yet. To be clear, you can go through and you can upload your resume through Peak Performers, and it takes all of 2 minutes. And we don't ask for any disability documentation on the front end of that. Later on in the process, we would ask for like a note from the doctor, or say, for example, like a note from the VA or something like that, something that kind of gives that authenticity to it, but that happens a little bit later in the process, and I wouldn't worry. There are also unique situations that come up where somebody may not have access to health care right now, and so they don't have a doctor currently, and we are also understanding of those situations as well and work with you under a timeline just to make sure that you have access to the health care. So long story short, we try to take people's word for it, especially if it's something that they say has been affecting them their entire life. And Armando did ask, is diabetes considered a disability? Yes, it is. Let's take a look, see here.
I'd like to say that a lot of these conditions that will move them up to the top of your referral pile are things that they don't consider to be a disability because they've lived with them such a long time and they manage it. And so
Yeah.
it doesn't really impact their lives in any significant way. Like ADHD, lots of adults get diagnosed later in life with adult ADHD, and it explains why they have had these issues, but it never was really a debilitating condition, and yet it will qualify them to move up. So
Kathy, oftentimes disability historically has been used to describe somebody who can't work, right? We talk about our disabled cousin that's living off of Social Security or something like that. Realistically, we need to expand our definition of that to include people from a wide range of different experiences. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes we have been living and managing it for many, many different years. And many times we are the expert on our disability and exactly what it takes for us to be successful. Really, kind of where peak performance steps in is that a lot of times disability will have a very subtle effect on the way somebody engages in the workplace, the track record that they have. It may affect them getting a job in the first place or keeping a job or getting promoted. And really what we're seeking to do is kind of level the playing field for all people and get people to feel more comfortable bringing their entire self to work, and most importantly, asking for what they need to be successful. People often ask me like, hey, Miles, should I come out and tell people that I have a disability at work? You know, my boss wants me to check a box on an application or whatever. And I say, well, you know, that's a very personal decision, especially if it is an invisible condition for you. But think about some of the different possibilities for it. First off, your disability needs can change over time, and what may be completely managed right now could more adversely affect you in the future, and you want to leave the door open in the future so that you can ask for accommodations.
Yes.
But the second thing is that keep in mind that a lot of times by coming out in the workplace and saying that you have a disability, or you don't have to even use that word, you know, you can say, hey, I'm somebody that's neurodiverse, or I'm somebody that has ADHD, or I'm somebody that, you know, has any number of things. I'm somebody that's hearing impaired myself. Um, a lot of times by explaining who you are and how this has affected you and what you've learned from that experience actually enhances you as a person and makes it so that more people are much more comfortable and know how to communicate with you more effectively. Eric will oftentimes mention that, hey, Miles, I was trying to talk to you the other day and stuff, and it seemed like you were ignoring me. And I was like, well, I wasn't ignoring you. I just literally couldn't hear you. You know, and there's so many different kind of very subtle ways that disability can affect us at work that we don't even think about. We oftentimes think about ADHD, but think about how that might affect you. Being able to do some things like send an email or keep organized or stay on top of it or focus during a meeting. These things have oftentimes very subtle effects that we have been managing for different years, but the effects are nonetheless still there. And it's important that we recognize that and really kind of advocate for ourselves and what we need and how we are most successful in the office place.
Yes. And I did want to call out, Kathy did, hold on, write something over here. And I wanted to read that to you guys because it was great. Never Search Alone by Phil Terry is a trending book on networking your way to a new job. I encourage you to join the Never Search Alone LinkedIn group, which provides support, encouragement, networking advice, success stories, etc. This is exactly what we were talking about when we say networking, and pick your groups in LinkedIn and have a place to voice and relay and, you know, and just have feedback from other people that are going through the like-minded situations. Thank you, Kathy, for calling that out.
I gave a presentation on 2 trending books, and one was Never Search Alone. The other one was the 2-hour job search.
Yeah.
And so I'm a member of the Never Search Alone group on LinkedIn as well. And they recently had a presentation by this guy who had been laid off after 15 years with Google.
Mhm.
And they encourage you to, we say SWAT teams, in that book, they call it a job search council. And for you to get a networking group together, a rather small one. But he went back and talked to a former colleague who was still at Google. I don't know if he was a manager or what, but he said, here's my resume. Here's how I'm presenting myself. And the guy said, you know, with your job title that you're promoting yourself as this, there are very few companies that really look for this. But what I've always been impressed with you about is the fact that you have this unique skill to do this global blah, whatever.
Yeah.
And he said lots of companies use that, are looking for that. And if I were you, I would reframe who you are, how you title yourself, the kinds of work you go after, and that networking feedback that he got changed the whole way he was looking for a job, and he got multiple offers. And he came back to the Never Search Alone LinkedIn group and made that presentation. But reaching out to people and getting that kind of clarity
Yes.
of how we see you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I just thought that was enormous.
She-
If I can find a link to that, I'll send it out to Job Club, because I just thought that was great. And the other thing I was going to tell you was they keep talking these days about young people and how vast percentages of young people are suffering from anxiety, and they're on medication for anxiety. I completely get that. Look at the world we're giving them. Oh my God. But that's a mental health issue. Mental health is a disability that more and more people are dealing with and are reluctant to talk about. The wonderful role that peak performers plays is you talk about your condition to them. They help you present yourself to a company. And more and more companies, I hope, are being open to people with some sort of a mental health condition that impacts their performance. And it reminds me of a job seeker we had years and years ago, maybe like 20 years ago. She was in Mensa. She was very, very intelligent, but she suffered from a number of different mental health conditions. And she lived with me for a while she was looking for a job. And she ended up getting a project management position for a big financial institution in the Dallas area. And one of the accommodations they gave her was she got very anxious during meetings. And so she was able to opt out of meetings. I mean, it almost made me want to say, I have the same condition, but I hate meetings so much. But they allowed her not to attend meetings, and they would send her a copy of the minutes, what had transpired during the meetings and so forth and so on. But it was they so appreciated and valued what she was able to contribute to the company that they were able to make that accommodation for her.
I'm going to drop it in the chat real quick here as well, Kathy, a link called askjan.org. And we oftentimes think about accommodations as these really strict things. We think about them as like an HR process. We think about them as, a ramp or like a specialty kind of grip equipment in the bathroom, right? But accommodations are a lot fuzzier than that. A lot of times they are things that we can't even see. In fact, most accommodations actually cost employers $0, nothing. And furthermore, it's really important that we acknowledge kind of the full scope of it. Accommodations, I like to think of them as just adaptations. What do you need in the work environment? And keep in mind that your employer isn't going to be able to say yes to everything, but a lot of times through the process, what they are required to do is negotiate with you and talk with you and come to an understanding. But I like to recommend to people that it never hurts to ask. And a lot of times what you can do is you can come to the table with a solution and say, hey, I experienced X, Y, and Z, and this is what I found has made me more successful in the future. Because employers at the end of the day, they aren't looking for a problem, they're looking for a solution. So if you come to them and say, hey, this is what I need to be successful, a lot of times they're more than likely willing to say yes, or at least, how about this instead, and kind of negotiate with you. But askjan.org is a really good resource to kind of start your journey, learn a little bit more about like all the different disabilities that are out there, but also learn a little bit more about what it means to ask for an accommodation and what are some of the different, say, for example, you are somebody that has sleep apnea, or say, for example, you are somebody that has previously battled cancer. What does accommodations look like? Are there accommodations, and what have other people asked for in the past as well, too? So it just kind of helps you expand your thinking and kind of get creative with it.
Okay, anybody else with a question? You can unmute and ask, or you can put it in the chat, either one. I've seen the numbers. Let me just ask you one last thing, if nobody else wants to ask it. So I've seen the unemployment numbers, which still stay pretty high. We haven't had the hard recession that everybody feared. We've had a soft recession, sort of. But more and more big layoffs in different parts of the country. Still, the numbers look good, but my little sister just got laid off from a pharmaceutical company after 26 years there. And that was a big company that's having a big global adjustment. And so anyway, we see a little bit more of that. What do you guys see? Do you see more little islands of unemployment, big layoffs? Do you see more people still getting other jobs? Is it becoming more difficult? What is the
It
dynamic
is
that you're
becoming
seeing?
more difficult, yes. I do see people that are typically hired relatively quickly if they stay within the same industry and if they stay within an industry that is very actively hiring. But there are different pockets of people, like you said, that are more severely affected. For example, we were talking the other day with a gentleman from a mortgage industry, and the mortgage industry had seen a lot of layoffs in that particular sector because interest rates are so very high right now. So, we see things like that.
But we also see a lot of layoffs too from the big companies. Netflix laid off a lot of people around here. Dell laid off a lot of people around here. 3M laid off. So like the big companies, you're right, they are laying off pockets of people. So we do see that.
However, what typically happens is that they will oftentimes do these targeted layoffs in such a way to make a particular financial goal or appease their investors and raise their stock price. But realistically, what's happening is that other tech companies are oftentimes hiring them. Or keep in mind too that just because you work for Netflix doesn't mean that you need to turn around and work for Hulu next. Yeah, that might be where you're most attractive as a candidate, but what were you doing at Netflix? And like, what was your specific job and how can you translate that over? Because there's many other, a lot of times it's just a matter of translation. To be clear, the best time to make a career transition is while you are currently employed. So that's the best time to do it, is move between jobs while you're still currently fully employed at that company. But if you don't have that opportunity, a lot of times it just comes down to how you translate, how you project yourself, how you market yourself as a candidate, and of course, who you know.
Yes. And all of those things can be learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, job search skills. It's the way you get your next job may not be the way that you got your last job. But reach out and help each other. Okay. Anything else? Let's see. There's one new message. What is that? Shannon, I always loved your story of taking a skill you have and putting in a job board search bar. Can you share about that?
You used to talk when we were when you're doing member orientation back in the old days in person. You had
Oh,
this.
you mean me?
Yeah, you had this
Oh,
great.
I thought you meant them.
Yeah, no, you had this great example of people who had been in micro something and they were able to get into the solar industry or something like that. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't know. Certainly sometimes if you do have a unique skill, just like you managed a database or whatever, and you can just put that in and see what other companies or what other industries look for that skill. It could be that it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same kind of company that you were working for before, but you find, oh, this other industry sector also uses this skill. I'm going to market myself there. Also, I think sometimes it is helpful to put a skill in Indeed with no location and just see what do they call it? Maybe it's a different name for that skill in a different industry sector, and so you can present yourself that way. These days, I've got several good friends who were content people, technical writers, content producers who are being laid off. In fact, one of my friends told me that she was told she's been working for a long time through Accenture at Google for years as a technical writer, content producer. And they told her initially she was going to be laid off last October. Then they extended it to January. And now they have told her that she probably won't face a layoff until probably next October, and they'll wait to see. But she said that Accenture had 200 people. I don't know if they were all at Google or just at Accenture, and they're now down to 20. And I said, is that because of ChatGPT? Is that because of AI? And that also played a role in my sister's layoff. And she said, I said it could be that initially she said no. And I said, if I were you, here are some sites you can go to become an expert on prompting. And so in some places, somebody told me that they had seen a job posting for a prompt engineer. And they call themselves that because they want you not only to be able to understand how to deliver the appropriate prompts for content development, but you may have to do the coding, do the HTML or whatever it is that keys that into an algorithm. And so having that combination. So my friend who thought she was going to be laid off did that. She took those courses through Coursera or whatever, and studied websites that teach how to give the most effective prompts so that you can manage the AI stuff. It's a new skill. It's just like years ago when right after 9/11, and we started having hackers and internet security. And I can remember it in that very next job club meeting after 9/11, where I said, any kind of security skills you have are going to be in demand, whether it's physical building security, but especially if it's internet security. And there were people that it wasn't a thing, but they did start what is it, CISSP certification. That was internet security, software security, and doing the hacking defense and so forth. So sometimes you can just use your oh, Armando, thank you. Boy, that goes back 20 years, Armando. So that you're at least 15.
Yeah.
But you can just use your wonderful great brains and think, okay, what's weak and where do we need strength? And you go off and you teach yourself skills, reinvent yourself as somebody that can do this, and then sell it and see. Anyway, all right.
Kathy, I remember the presentation. You were talking about the folks that were laid off with making chips. And I believe it was Samsung or somebody out here that were laying off a lot of people. That conversation triggered me, and it took me to a different level about cross training. So what it ended up happening is that there is a manufacturer in the Austin area, metro area, and I believe now they are Mission Solar, which actually makes solar panels, but they were interested in designing chips. They make a pretty advanced chip now, by the way. One of the best rated chips and panels for solar production. So that was the conversation, and that this company started hiring because there was a transition between people that were making silicon chips to making solar chips. There was a direct correlation because it's a layered wafer that has to come together. So that was a good presentation, and I think it was about 5 to 6 years ago, and I probably have the notes on it somewhere. So thank you very much for that presentation. But it did change me for that moment. Now I need to get off my butt and put it to work again.
Put that butt to work. Anyway, and sometimes just brainstorming with people. That's why the SWAT teams are helpful, and the job search councils are helpful. Just getting with other people, other job seekers, and brainstorming about where do you see opportunities, and how do you know somebody that we can talk to, and we got people that got certified as internet security people, software security people, just because of that, and they had to do it all on their own because it was so new that people weren't anticipating it. So anyway, talk to people. It can't happen when you're just lying in bed and watching TV. Talk to
Speaking
people.
of which, Kathy, if I could add one final thing, I hope that you will join Peak Performers and you'll join Launchpad as well. If you want to come talk to people face to face, we will be, you can come and talk with us very soon. On April 11th, the largest job fair of the year is happening. There will be literally hundreds of employers there. So come there, bring a copy of your resume, because you
Including
never
us.
know. We're going to be there. We're going to be helping showcase it and stuff like that. But yeah, really, like this is a tremendous opportunity for you to get out there, meet employers who are actually hiring, and also get some visibility of some employers that might not be, that you might not have ever heard of before. So we hope you'll join us on April 11th. It's going to start at 11 and run through, I believe, 3 p.m. too. And I'm sure that Shannon will put all the links for that in the newsletter too.
Yes, and we will be sharing a table, like Miles said, with Shannon's team over there at Launchpad. So if you see us there, pull up aside, say hello, let us take some pictures or whatever, because you know we are there. We're going to be there, and we're going to partner with them, and we just want to see everybody.
That's right.
Jobs for everybody.